All right, if you're watching this video, it's because you're having a hard time recognizing what sine, cosine, and tangent is in a right triangle. The first thing you have to understand is there's a word your teacher tried to tell you, which was SOHCAHTOA. The SOH right here, this stands for the sine function. Sine references a ratio of two sides. In this case here, the opposite side over the adjacent, or opposite over the hypotenuse. That's how it's spelled as well. You see how it says SOH? That's the opposite side over hypotenuse. The K in SOHCAHTOA stands for the cosine function. The cosine function represents the ratio of the adjacent side over hypotenuse. And then the next one is, what does tangent stand for? Well, tangent stands for, that's TOA, that stands for the opposite side over the adjacent side. Now, before you even understand what opposite and adjacent actually means, you got to recognize how you live in a neighborhood. So, first of all, if you happen to live in this house right here, and you happen to live on a street or a hallway, the street maybe is called Hypotenuse Street, for example. The neighbors are considered two different kinds of neighbors. You've got a neighbor that is the opposite neighbor. They live across the street. So opposite is always across the street in respect to your house. And then also the adjacent neighbor is the next door neighbor. This is adjacent, ADJ. So adjacent is the next door neighbor. Opposite is straight across the street. Now, if I look at this angle on the triangle down here in the bottom right corner, if you lived at this angle right here, and you were to draw in Hypotenuse Street, that would go through the box that you see in the right triangle and then through the opposite side that's the longest, okay? So Hypotenuse Street always goes through the box and then through the opposite side that is from that box. Now, from there, the neighbor that's in this triangle, this is the across the street neighbor, that's opposite, and the adjacent neighbor is the one right next door. This is your adjacent neighbor here. So as you're trying to figure out who is who in the triangle, to make this easier to understand, is first of all, recognize where you live. If you're saying that you live at sine of angle A being where you live right here, Hypotenuse Street is right here, okay? So therefore, then, across the street, this is the neighbor across the street. This 7 is the opposite side, and the next door neighbor on that same side of the street is the 24. This is your adjacent side. So now, when we start talking about what is the sine, sine is this SOH of the word SOHCAHTOA. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Now, in this triangle, this 7 is the opposite side, and then the hypotenuse right here is the one that's on Hypotenuse Street. So if we're going to take this right here, we're going to take 7 over 25 and write the ratio, and that's all you do for this question. The other one then is if we're saying, what is the cosine? Well, cosine is K, C-A-H. That's the adjacent side over hypotenuse. Well, that would be this side right here over the hypotenuse of 25. So this is going to be 24 over 25. That's really all there is to answering these questions, is just you saying what is the ratio of the sides that reflect the angle of where you live. Lastly, this thing could also take a turn, and it could also say, well, what about tangent? What about tangent of angle C? Well, tangent of angle C means now you live right here. So what was originally opposite becomes adjacent, and so on, because now Hypotenuse Street doesn't change, but this is your next door neighbor. This is adjacent now. And then straight across the street from the letter angle C, this becomes the hypotenuse, or this becomes the opposite side. So then, if I were to say what's tangent, well, tangent again is opposite over adjacent. Well, in this case then, if I say what's the tangent of angle C, that's opposite 24, that 24 neighbor that's across the street, over the adjacent side 7. That's how those kind of work too. So it all depends on where your angle lives, depending then on what the opposite side and the adjacent side are going to be. Hope this video helps, and good luck.